Okay, good morning. Well, Bex and I are going to co-present this session on social media. I'm going to lay some foundations about what social media is and kind of how it works, and then Bex is going to go on as a kind of practitioner and show us what you can do with it. So this is me. I used to live here. Imagine. When Fiona was talking about coming back here 3 years ago, I was thinking, I haven't been through that door since 1989. So that's 22 years ago. I came here as an 18-year-old to study and was a resident of Holland House, right here where we are, for 2 years. So I know a few stories. Now, Fiona was talking about the light switch. I was thinking, lights? You know? And I have many, many stories which I will gladly share with you about my time here and about what really went on in this building. But actually, there's quite a lot I can't confess. You can read my bio. I have a few jobs at the moment, so I'm finding it quite hard to describe, with a job title what I do. But one of my most exciting projects is creating an Arabic version of Yes He Is that we were looking at yesterday, so I'll gladly share more with you privately about that. Okay, something relevant. While I was here, some of my teachers were involved in developing camera chips, the first camera chip that's now present on a lot of mobile phones. That was back in the late 1980s. And here's a confession which I will share with you, and this is a bit embarrassing. I wrote a paper about the future of technology, and I was a little bit green. I made a prediction that no way would we all be walking down the street with a mobile phone in our pocket. How about that? So, if you like, you can disregard anything I'm about to say from now on, because actually I know nothing. Now, in my defense, you'll see around the corner here, if you go out here and turn right, you'll see a couple of doors like this. This is where the telephone was, and we would queue for hours to make a telephone call. Okay? There was only one phone we could call out with for several hundred students living in this block. So, maybe a lack of vision and foresight on my part, but, you never know how things are going to turn out. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to talk real and virtual, or as we're going to call it, offline and online relationships and communities. Now, media is through a very interesting cycle at the moment. Media, as we heard yesterday, has been about stories for generations, for centuries. A conversation between people, sharing stories, a family or a small group of people. Then we've been through this age of mass media where an agenda is pushed. We have a message which we want to proclaim and promote, a one-way communication, propaganda. And as broadcasters or publishers, we have been engaged in mass media. Now we're in another stage, the digital conversation, and it's kind of come round full circle because we're using technology to facilitate the conversation. Conversation very often involves sharing stories. I love this picture, it's beautiful, isn't it? How many of us have enjoyed a situation like this, sitting around a fire, sharing stories of the day, what we've been up to, how we're doing in each other's lives? Apparently you can do the same thing in Second Life. I don't spend time there myself, but they are doing just that. There's a bunch of people in Second Life sharing stories. And this is interesting because it seems that increasingly in social media, what we do online mirrors what we do offline. And I think that's really, really important. And in the offline world, we have relationships and networks of contacts we build relationships with, and they are built around our interests and our activities. So In our own environments, we might have family and our neighborhood and our work and our leisure. These are the areas we spend our time, and these are the areas in which we build our networks of relationships through our interests and through the ways we spend our time. In our families and our neighborhoods, through our leisure time and at work. And we build hundreds, thousands of contacts, and we sometimes find there's interaction between some of the groups. So some of my leisure networks may interlink with some of my family networks and my neighborhood networks, and that actually strengthens and reinforces the relationships. And that's an offline social network. So social networking isn't anything new. We've always had social networks, just not online until quite recently. So think of what you do in the offline world as social networking. Now, in the offline world, we were talking yesterday about contextualization and how we share stories, visual stories, and using media, but even without using media, in our social networks, we are salt and light, aren't we? We talk and we share the story of Jesus in our own lives. We're witnesses to what he's done in our lives. And maybe over time, we'll win our friends. It doesn't come quickly. It takes a long time to build relationships. And some of them may be saved and some of them may not be. But at least we'll have a chance to influence them as we spend time with them in that relationship. Now, St. Francis apparently didn't say this, although it's attributed to him. He said, preach the gospel at all times and if necessary, use words. And the point of that is that our lives and what we do and what we portray about the love of Jesus in our lives speaks louder than anything we might say or proclaim. Now, depending on your theology, there's a point of overlap, isn't there, between the sacred, the things of God, and the secular, the things of the world. Some people may separate them, some people may overlap them to a lesser or more significant degree. But there's a point of intersection, isn't there, where we are in the world, but not of the world. We have our kingdom identity, that which God has put in us, part of his kingdom, but we're in the world, we're human, we live here. So there's the secular as well. And so where they intersect, this is the point of gospel connection. This is where we can make a difference. And that's Christian living and engagement. And in the offline world, that's incarnational. You know, Jesus was fully God, yet fully human. God made flesh, incarnational. And for us, as we engage in the world but not of it, we have that same incarnational representation of Jesus. Okay, and as we share, we have a platform, if you like, but we have legitimacy through the relationship, through trust that we've built up. Through our authenticity, we can share Jesus from a point of honesty. Okay, what about in the online world? Well, in the online world, relationships and communities are built around our interests and activities. Isn't that astonishing? And we have social networks. Facebook is a very popular one, but there are many more. And through those social networks, we interact and network with our family and our neighborhood and leisure and work. So offline, I like wine, so online I might be in a wine club and find out about wine and buy wine. I don't like Duran Duran, this is an illustration, but offline I listen to the music, online I might participate in a fan club and build relationships with other music fans there. Okay, cycling, I might ride a bicycle, offline, online, I might post a video about how to mend a puncture, or I might take part in some event that's been created. So this is how online and offline tend to mirror each other. And I think what's important is that we use the online opportunity just as much as we do offline to take part in that digital conversation, participate, interact, involve, build relationships, and through that we can share the stories. Okay, now this guy knows a thing or two about communities. He says they already exist, and it's interesting, if you've ever tried to build an online community, it's very difficult to build a community from scratch. Communities tend to just evolve and form themselves. They're already there. But we have an opportunity to participate in that community. And his mission, and obviously he's quite good at it, he helps us and facilitates our communities online to do what they need to do. So social media is nothing really revolutionary, and it's not all about the internet, although the internet is a place that social media can happen. And media is about exchanging messages through a medium. Social means between people, so social media is all about sharing stories, which is what we're talking about. This is something which I find quite interesting because many people approach online relationships from a point of skepticism or cynicism. I'm one of them, I admit. It's taken me a while to understand online relationships, but they're not real, are they? They can't possibly have the same quality as real human offline interaction. Well, maybe, but maybe not as well. And there are some very legitimate ways, I think, that, and very valid ways where online relationships actually have as much validity as offline. There are many shy, lonely, introverted people who find it difficult to interact offline, but online they suddenly become alive because maybe it's because they're anonymous or they have a mask of an identity, you know, or an alias or something. Somehow they just feel a little bit more secure to interact online, less consequences, perhaps. Lots of nasty things can happen with online relationships as well. That's a whole nother subject, of course, and obviously there are many care and caution advisories that we have to put there. But online relationships can be very strong and powerful. You probably all know, as I do, people who may have dated online and have got together offline. Fabulous. I'm catching up with some friends here offline. I had dinner with a friend on Tuesday I hadn't seen for 18 years. Tonight I'm staying with a couple of friends who I used to know here 20-something years ago. Tomorrow I'm having lunch with another one I haven't seen for 16 years. Lost contact offline. I'm really sad about that. We reconnected online a couple of years ago, and every day we share with each other what's going on in our lives online. And now we're catching up offline. Wonderful. It's renewed that relationship, and I'm sure you all have stories of how online you've been able to re-establish and reconnect with people. So relationships which begin online or which are restored online can have an offline manifestation as well. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. There's a huge overlap, which I think is marvelous. Okay, so social media provides us with a platform and a range of tools online that help us share the message of Jesus in a powerful and relatable way. Is it incarnational online because we're not really there? Well, maybe, but actually maybe it is as well. I don't know the answer to that. I think, just as I finish and pass over to Bex, this man, Paul, said a very wise thing. He said that I've become all things to all men so that by all possible means, some might be saved. So maybe the whole online thing isn't as good as the offline thing. Maybe it is, but actually some might be saved as we spend time online, so that makes it worthwhile. Okay, Bex.